Long ago, in the lush and sacred forests of ancient India, there lived a beautiful maiden named Shakuntala. She was no ordinary girl. Her birth was as wondrous as the tales told by wandering sages. Born to the celestial nymph Menaka and the great sage Vishwamitra, Shakuntala was abandoned as an infant and left under the care of birds known as Shakuntas, until the wise hermit Kanva found her and raised her as his own in his tranquil hermitage. Shakuntala grew up amidst the whispering trees and gentle rivers, surrounded by the love of her foster father and the company of her dear friends, Anasuya and Priyamvada. She was kind-hearted, with a voice as sweet as a nightingale's song, and her beauty was unmatched, like a wild flower blooming unseen in the depths of the forest. One fateful day, King Dushyanta, the mighty ruler of Hastinapur, ventured into the forest on a grand hunting expedition. Chasing a swift deer, his chariot thundered through the woods until he found himself near Sage Kanva's hermitage. The moment he stepped inside, the air itself seemed to hum with serenity. And then he saw her, Shakuntala, watering the fragrant plants, her slender fingers brushing the petals with tender care. Dushyanta was spellbound. Never had he seen such grace, such innocence. As she turned, their eyes met, and in that instant, the king's heart was ensnared, not by the arrows of Cupid, but by the quiet magic of destiny. Little did they know this chance meeting would weave a tale of love, separation, and a test of memory that would echo through the ages. The king, still dressed in his hunting attire, approached Shakuntala with reverence, for he was in the sacred space of sages. He bowed slightly and introduced himself. Shakuntala, though shy, welcomed him with the grace befitting a hermit's daughter, offering him water to wash his feet and fruits from the forest. As they spoke, Dushyanta learned of her unusual upbringing, how Sage Kanva had raised her with love, how the animals of the forest were her friends, and how she had never stepped beyond the groves of the ashram. In turn, Shakuntala listened with wide-eyed wonder as the king spoke of his kingdom, his battles, and the grand city of Hastinapur, with its towering palaces and bustling streets. Days turned into weeks, and Dushyanta found himself lingering in the hermitage, his royal duties momentarily forgotten. The wise sages noticed the growing affection between the two, but said nothing, for love, when pure, was considered divine. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Dushyanta confessed his feelings. "Shakuntala," he said, "my heart refuses to leave this forest, for it now resides with you." Shakuntala, though trembling with emotion, spoke the truth in her heart. She too had fallen deeply in love with the noble king. Since Sage Kanva was away on a pilgrimage, they decided to marry in the Gandharva style, a sacred union of mutual consent, witnessed only by the gods and the whispering trees. The fragrant blossoms rained upon them as they exchanged vows, and the fire of the yajna bore witness to their eternal bond. For a brief golden time, they lived in bliss, but duty called, and Dushyanta, being a king, could not stay forever. "I must return to my kingdom," he told her, "but I will send for you soon. You shall be my queen." With a heavy heart, he placed his royal ring on her finger, a token of his promise, and rode away, his heart torn between love and duty. Little did they know that fate had other plans, and their love was about to face a trial neither could foresee. As the seasons turned, Shakuntala spent her days lost in sweet memories of Dushyanta, tracing the intricate carvings of his ring with her fingers. Her heart fluttered every time a traveler passed through the hermitage, hoping it would be a messenger from the king. But no word came. One day, as she wandered by the riverbank, lost in thought, the fierce sage Durvasa arrived at the ashram. Known for his fiery temper, the sage expected immediate hospitality. But Shakuntala, absorbed in her dreams of Dushyanta, failed to notice his presence. Enraged by this slight, Durvasa thundered, "You ignore a guest as if lost in foolish fantasies? Then let the one you dream of forget you. Only at the sight of a token of his love shall his memory return." Horrified, Shakuntala fell at his feet, begging forgiveness. Her friends too pleaded with the sage. Moved by their sincerity, Durvasa softened his curse slightly. "If shown something precious given by your beloved, his heart will remember." Days later, Sage Kanva returned. Seeing his daughter's sorrow, he decided it was time for her to join her husband. "Go to Hastinapur," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A wife's place is beside her king." The entire hermitage gathered to bid farewell to their beloved Shakuntala. Even the deer she raised nuzzled her hands in goodbye, and the peacocks spread their brilliant feathers in a final dance of blessing. As Shakuntala journeyed towards her new life, destiny played its cruel game. While bathing in a sacred pond along the way, the fateful ring, her only hope, slipped from her finger and vanished into the depths, swallowed by a passing fish. Shakuntala arrived at the grand gates of Hastinapur, her heart pounding like a monsoon rain. The bustling streets, the towering palaces, everything was so different from her quiet forest home. Clutching the edges of her simple sari, she stepped into the royal court where King Dushyanta sat upon his jeweled throne. But when their eyes met, there was no spark of recognition, only polite curiosity in the king's gaze. Trembling, Shakuntala reminded him of their sacred vows in the hermitage, of the ring he had placed on her finger. The courtiers whispered behind their hands as Dushyanta, his brow furrowed in confusion, gently replied, "Noble lady, I have no memory of such a union." Her face burned with shame as laughter rippled through the court. Some called her a cunning ascetic's daughter trying to trap a king. Others pitied the deluded maiden. Worst of all was the crushing realization in Dushyanta's eyes. He truly did not remember her. That night, as Shakuntala wept in the palace gardens, a golden light filled the air. The celestial nymph Menaka, her true mother, appeared and embraced her broken-hearted daughter. "The gods have written a difficult path for you, my child," Menaka whispered. "But every storm passes. Come, let me take you to Sage Maricha's ashram. You shall bear your child in safety there." And so, Shakuntala vanished from the mortal world, leaving behind a king haunted by strange dreams of forest flowers and a love he could not name. Back in Hastinapur, King Dushyanta found himself restless. Though he had dismissed Shakuntala's claims, her sorrowful eyes haunted his dreams. Meanwhile, far from the palace, a humble fisherman made a curious catch, a glittering ring trapped in the belly of a fish. Recognizing the royal seal, he rushed to present it to the king. The moment Dushyanta held the ring, memories crashed over him like a tidal wave. The fragrant hermitage, Shakuntala's laughter, their secret vows under the sacred fire, Horror gripped his heart as he realized the terrible truth. He had rejected his own wife, cursed by a sage's wrath. In anguish, the king ordered a search across the kingdoms, but no trace of Shakuntala could be found. Artists painted her likeness from the king's descriptions, and messengers scoured every forest and village. Dushyanta grew thin with grief, refusing all comforts. He would often wander alone, leaving his chariot to walk barefoot through the very woods where he first met his lost love, hoping against hope to find some clue. One evening, as he rested near a mountain stream, he heard celestial music. Following the sound, he stumbled upon a miraculous sight: a golden-haired boy, barely 6 years old, fearlessly playing with a lion cub, pulling its whiskers as if it were a tame kitten. The child's face struck Dushyanta like lightning, for in those fearless eyes he saw his own reflection. Dushyanta stood transfixed as the golden-haired child tamed the snarling lion with nothing but his laughter. The beast, instead of attacking, licked the boy's hands like a domesticated cat. As the king stepped forward, twigs crunching under his feet, the boy turned with eyes blazing like twin suns, eyes that held the same fierce gentleness as Shakuntala's. "Who are you, young warrior?" Dushyanta asked, his voice trembling. "I am Bharata," the boy declared, puffing his small chest, "son of Shakuntala and grandson of the great sage Vishwamitra." He pointed to the mountains where smoke curled from hidden hermitages. "My mother says I have royal blood in my veins, but the sages are my teachers." The name struck Dushyanta like a thunderbolt. Bharata, meaning the cherished one. Every feature confirmed the impossible truth: the curve of his brows, the proud set of his jaw. This was his son, conceived in the hermitage and born in exile. Just then, a voice like wind chimes called from the trees. Dushyanta's breath caught as Shakuntala emerged, her forest-green sari fluttering, her face still radiant, though marked by sorrow. When their eyes met across the clearing, time itself seemed to pause. The king fell to his knees, tears carving paths through the dust on his face. "Forgive me," he whispered as the forgotten past came rushing back. The sage's curse, the lost ring, his unforgivable rejection. Shakuntala's hands trembled as she helped him rise, her touch reigniting memories buried but never truly lost. Shakuntala's hands lingered on Dushyanta's shoulders as the king wept at her feet. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Even the usual chatter of monkeys and birds had stilled. Little Bharata watched with wide eyes, sensing the storm of emotions between these two strangers who were somehow his parents. "Rise, my lord," Shakuntala finally whispered. "The curse has lifted, and with it my anger." Her voice carried the wisdom of her years in the sage's hermitage. "The gods write our stories with invisible ink. What seems lost is merely waiting to be remembered." Dushyanta stood, drinking in the sight of her face like a man who had wandered the desert to find his oasis. He reached for Bharata, who instinctively shied away before curiosity overcame caution. When the boy allowed his father to lift him, Dushyanta felt the weight of destiny settle upon him. This fearless child playing with lions would one day rule empires. That night, in Sage Maricha's ashram, the truth unfolded like a sacred scroll. The sage revealed how Shakuntala had given birth alone, how celestial beings had attended Bharata's birth, singing prophecies of his future greatness. Dushyanta listened with his head bowed, ashamed of his unwitting abandonment. "Enough tears," declared sage Maricha suddenly, his staff striking the earth. "Tomorrow at dawn, you return to Hastinapur, all three of you. The wheel of Dharma must turn forward." As the sacred fire crackled in agreement, Shakuntala and Dushyanta's fingers intertwined like vines that had finally found their way back to sunlight. As dawn painted the sky in hues of saffron and gold, a royal procession unlike any other wound its way toward Hastinapur. Dushyanta rode at the forefront, his regal bearing restored, but now with Shakuntala seated proudly beside him in the royal chariot. Between them stood little Bharata, his small hands gripping the chariot rail as he marveled at the cheering crowds that lined the road. The city gates swung open to reveal streets strewn with flower petals. Courtiers who had once scoffed at Shakuntala now bowed low, their faces flushed with shame and awe. The air thrummed with the sound of conch shells and drums as the royal family ascended the palace steps, where Queen Mother waited with tear-filled eyes to embrace the daughter-in-law she never knew she had. That evening, during the sacred yagna ceremony in the palace courtyard, the high priest placed Bharata upon Dushyanta's lap, a symbolic anointing of the crown prince. As firelight danced in the child's fearless eyes, the priests gasped. "This one bears the mark of Chakravartin," murmured the oldest sage. "He will rule not just a kingdom, but the entire circle of the earth." Shakuntala, now resplendent in royal silks, watched as her son played with his father's crown under the indulgent gaze of a court. The same fingers that had tamed lions now traced the jewels with curious reverence. When Dushyanta caught her eye across the fire, she saw in his gaze not just love, but gratitude for the forest maiden who had kept his legacy safe when he himself had failed to remember. In the years that followed, Hastinapur flourished like a lotus in full bloom. Bharata grew strong under the twin tutelage of royal gurus and visiting sages who recognized his extraordinary destiny. The boy who had played with lion cubs now wrestled with armored warriors twice his size and won. His laughter still tamed wild beasts, but his words began to sway ministers and scholars alike. Shakuntala, now revered as the Queen Mother, established a garden of medicinal herbs within the palace walls, bringing the wisdom of the forests into the heart of the kingdom. Women from nearby villages would come seeking remedies, and she healed them with the same gentle hands that had once nurtured saplings in Kanva's hermitage. Yet shadows lingered at the edges of their happiness. Dushyanta, though overjoyed with his family, often woke in the dead of night, haunted by the years stolen from him by the curse. He would walk to Bharata's chambers just to watch his son sleep. The rise and fall of the boy's chest, a living reminder of redemption. One fateful monsoon night, as rain lashed the palace walls, a messenger arrived with news that would test Bharata's mettle earlier than anyone had anticipated. A rebel king from the eastern lands, hearing rumors of a lion-taming prince, had dared to challenge Hastinapur's borders. His army now camped at the sacred river, defiling its waters with their presence. Bharata, barely 14, stood before the war council with fire in his eyes. "Let me lead the charge," he demanded, his voice deeper than his years should allow. The generals murmured, but Dushyanta, after a long look at Shakuntala's resigned smile, placed the royal sword in his son's hands. As dawn broke, the prince rode out, not on a war elephant, but on a lion he had raised from a cub. The rebels, upon seeing this golden-haired youth astride a roaring beast with the sunrise at his back, threw down their weapons and knelt in the mud. Without drawing a single drop of blood, Bharata had won his first kingdom. Bharata's bloodless victory at the river became the stuff of ballads. Bards sang of the golden prince who conquered not with swords, but with the sheer force of his destiny. One by one, neighboring kingdoms pledged allegiance, some through marriage alliances, others through voluntary surrender, awed by stories of the lion-riding prince who carried both a sage's wisdom and a warrior's strength. On his 16th birthday, as priests chanted Vedic hymns, Dushyanta placed the weight of an empire upon his son's head. The crown, wrought from the gold of conquered lands yet lined with the softest silk from Shakuntala's gardens, symbolized what Bharata would become, a ruler both powerful and compassionate. When the newly crowned king mounted his lion to circle the sacred fire, the earth itself seemed to tremble. Sages whispered that the gods were walking among mortals that day. In the years that followed, Bharata's name became synonymous with righteous rule. He established ashrams beside palaces, ensured no scholar went unfed, and famously decreed that even the lowest peasant could seek audience with him, provided they came with honest intent. The land prospered as never before, so much so that poets began calling it Bharatvarsha, the realm of Bharata. As for Shakuntala and Dushyanta, they watched their legacy unfold from the palace gardens where jasmine blossoms perfumed the twilight. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, they could hear the distant laughter of their great-grandchildren playing, a new generation already showing signs of that same fearless glint in their eyes. Thus ends our tale of love cursed and redeemed, of a prince who became an empire's namesake, and of the forest maiden who shaped history. But remember, dear friends, every end is but a new beginning in the great cycle of stories. For even now, Bharata's blood flows in the veins of heroes yet unborn. To keep listening to more stories like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, this is Uncle Ben signing off. Take care, and may the gods watch over you.